Well, good morning. Welcome to Thrive City. There's a verse in Proverbs that says, kind words are like honey, sweet to the soul and healthy for the body.
It's starting to feel like every week there's another name, another scandal, another fallen pastor, another church scrambling to control the fallout. We haven't even caught our breath from Robert Morris, the megachurch pastor accused of abuse and exposed for enabling predators, or Michael Tate, whose quiet departure from the Newsboys turned into a confession of years of alleged grooming, substance abuse, and sexual sin. And now, this. This time, it's Thrive City Church, a pastor caught in a sexual act in his own office, admitting it behind closed doors, and instead of outrage, the leadership applauded his honesty. According to the Roy's report, they didn't call the police, they didn't warn the public, they didn't hold him accountable, they told the church to stay silent. We're not talking about the world anymore. We're talking about the pulpit, the men who preach repentance by day and hide their own sin by night. What's happening in the modern church? Where are the men of God who fear God? Why does power now come with a trail of victims and cover-ups? We thought we'd seen it all, but Thrive City Church just added another name to the growing list of disgrace. The church is called Thrive City, but what happened here has nothing to do with thriving. According to the Roy's report, the incident happened in 2024. A female volunteer entered the pastor's office and found him behind a locked door, alone, pants down, caught in the act of masturbation. That pastor was Benjamin Tubbs, the founder and lead pastor of Thrive City Church in Syracuse, New York, a church affiliated with the Association of Related Churches, better known as ARC. The volunteer immediately reported what she saw. A private meeting was called. Leadership gathered, and right there in that room, Tubbs confessed to what he did. But instead of a reckoning, instead of immediate action, the meeting shifted. According to those present, and as reported by Julie Roys, Tubbs apologized, and his overseer Jordan Carter stepped in, not with accountability, but with damage control. Let's not live in a spirit of gossip. This doesn't need to go anywhere else. We've handled it. That's what the church heard. And when someone expressed concern about the cover-up, Carter didn't deny the incident. He doubled down, praised Tubbs for his honesty, and defended the decision to restore him quietly. But just when you think it couldn't get worse, it does. Because according to the Roy's report, Benjamin Tubbs didn't just fall in private. He made leadership decisions that should terrify every parent, every volunteer, every church member. He appointed 2 registered sex offenders into leadership positions. Not just greeters, not just janitors. He put them in charge of background checks. Let that sink in. Background checks. 2 men with criminal sexual histories, responsible for screening others for ministry and service. How does that happen? How do you look at their record, their convictions, their documented past, and still say, yeah, let's give them the keys to the gate, and don't tell us he didn't know? He did. The report says Tubbs was fully aware of their criminal status. So the question is, why? What was he trying to build? A safe church or a shield for people just like him? Who was he protecting? The flock or the predators? This wasn't just negligence. This was a pattern, a culture of minimizing danger, of quietly opening the door and looking the other way. And you wonder why he didn't want people talking. You wonder why silence was spiritualized, why gossip was rebuked harder than sin. Because if the people ever found out what was happening in the dark, they'd burn the system down. This wasn't just about a pastor getting caught. This was about what happened after. Because even after all of that, the confession, the background check scandal, the broken trust, Benjamin Tubbs was still allowed to stay. No police report, no warning to the congregation, no true accountability. Instead, the church leadership circled the wagons, and right in the middle of that circle was Jordan Carter, Thrive City's overseer, a man tied to ARC's vast church planting empire, and the one person in that room with the power to do the right thing, but instead, he chose silence. When a church leader falls, the next question is always the same: who let him stay? In this case, it was Jordan Carter, the church's overseer and a leader tied to the Association of Related Churches, better known as ARC. But what Carter did after Benjamin Tubbs admitted to masturbating in his church office, that's where the real damage began, because instead of accountability, Carter offered comfort. Instead of outrage, he offered applause. He said this in the private meeting, a moment captured in a leaked recording as reported by journalist Julie Roys, and I quote, "Let's not live in a spirit of gossip. This doesn't need to go anywhere else. We've handled it. That's what Carter reportedly told the church. Not, this is wrong. Not, we're calling the police. Not, we're removing him permanently. Number. He celebrated Tubbs' so-called transparency as if confessing to sexual misconduct in a church office was some kind of spiritual victory. What kind of overseer hears that and chooses damage control over discipline? Was he trying to protect the people or protect the ARC brand? Was this about healing or about hiding? And how many times has this same formula played out? Not just in Thrive City, but across ARC churches nationwide. You see, this isn't just about one pastor. It's about a network, a system that fast-tracks leaders but doesn't hold them when they fall. A network that teaches pastors how to launch churches overnight, but never teaches them what to do when they destroy lives behind the scenes. This is the machinery of silence. This is what it looks like when image becomes more important than integrity, when overseers turn into handlers and the pulpit becomes a stage for cover-ups. And make no mistake, Jordan Carter didn't just fail to act, he acted in the wrong direction. He looked that room in the eye and helped bury the truth. He helped bury the truth, but someone was still living with it, someone who walked into that room and saw the unseeable. A woman, a volunteer who came to serve the church and instead walked in on her pastor committing a sexual act behind a locked door. And after the shock, after the report, after the so-called confession, what did she get? Not justice, not safety, not healing. She got silence. According to Julie Roy's report, the church never advised her to go to the police. They didn't launch an investigation. There was no trauma support, no accountability process, no meaningful public acknowledgement, just a private meeting, a few words of regret, and a quiet cover-up led by men in power. And while they clapped for the integrity of a man who exposed himself in his own office, the woman who witnessed it was left to carry that trauma alone. Can we just pause and ask, what exactly was she supposed to do? Speak up and be labeled divisive? Leave and be told she had a bitter spirit? Stay and watch her pastor get restored like nothing ever happened? This is the part no one talks about. Not in ARC, not in these trendy church networks where branding is everything and broken women are just PR risks. Thrive City didn't just fail her, they silenced her. And that silence, it wasn't passive, it was deliberate, controlled, weaponized, because the truth didn't serve their platform, but protecting the pastor did. Thrive City didn't make these decisions in a vacuum. They're part of a much bigger machine, a network, a movement, a brand. It's called ARC, the Association of Related Churches. And if you've been paying attention, you've seen this pattern before. ARC is one of the fastest growing church planting organizations in the US. They train pastors, fund launches, brand ministries like startups, and push out churches at lightning speed. But what they don't do is hold those pastors accountable. ARC doesn't investigate abuse, it doesn't intervene when things go wrong, and it doesn't stop platforming men who've been exposed as predators or enablers. We've seen it in the story of Robert Morris, whose Gateway Church sent out convicted sex offenders into other churches. We've seen it in ARC's ties to leaders caught in affairs, abuse, coercion, all swept quietly under the rug. And now, we see it in Benjamin Tubbs, a man who exposed himself in his office, appointed sex offenders to leadership, lied by omission to his congregation, and still was shielded by his overseer. And where was ARC? Silent. No public response, no rebuke, no accountability, just another scandal, quietly managed behind the scenes, while another pastor slips out the back door and another church pretends nothing happened. So let's stop pretending this was just a one-off. This wasn't a fluke. This is a pattern, and ARC has built an entire ecosystem where it can thrive. When pastors fall, the victims are hushed, the overseers are applauded, and the machine just keeps moving. This is why victims stay silent, not because they're afraid of sin, but because they're afraid of the system. Because the moment a woman comes forward in the church, the narrative shifts. She's bitter, she's unforgiving, she's trying to destroy a man of God. And the man who exposed himself in his office, who hired sex offenders to guard the front door, he's praised for his transparency. This is the sickness no one wants to name, a culture where victims are inconvenient, and sin is only taken seriously if it's easy to hide. And let's be honest, it's not just Thrive City, it's not just ARC, it's a widespread infection in modern church culture. We preach about light, but we punish people for shining it. We talk about truth, but we silence anyone who tells it at the wrong time. We cry restoration when a fallen leader wants his pulpit back, but give no language for the wreckage left behind. This is why survivors walk away, not just from churches, but from faith altogether, because when the people of God protect predators and ignore pain, what's left to believe in? We are not just losing leaders, we are losing souls, not because God failed, but because too many churches did.